Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Beer Leaguer Podcast. Once again, it's time for another Shorts episode. Shorts episodes, if you don't know, are shorter episodes that I do between kind of larger topics, covering some of the previous things that we've talked about, some follow-ups on stuff like that, and other random stuff that I have seen pop up and around on the internet or that has come up in my day-to-day life that is honestly spending a lot of time at the hockey rinks. Okay, first thing I wanted to talk about was some follow-ups from the previous episode and kind of all the subsequent clips and stuff like that I've put out on social media and discussions. And there's been a lot of it about beginner gear and upgrading gear, and a lot of talk about used versus new, things like that. And so a couple different things that I wanted to touch on from all those things that got talked about. First off, had a couple people talk about helmets and kind of used versus new helmets. I think it's generally accepted on everything that used helmets are a very sketchy idea at best. New helmets is kind of the way to go. New helmets that are not expired. Helmets do have an expiration date. I don't think I really explained that fully in the episode, but helmets that are properly certified do have an expiration date on them that you can look at and see. And yes, a lot of beer leaguers especially do play with helmets that are past the expiration date, but it is a good guideline, especially if you are buying a new helmet. Don't get one that's like expires next year. They usually are for a number of years that they should be still good for. So if you're buying something new, definitely make sure it doesn't expire anytime soon. And if you're looking at used helmets, it's a kind of a good gauge of how old that helmet is. You can't really tell. And what happens with expired helmets? They don't just magically stop working and disintegrate, but that's kind of how long the manufacturer really, expects all of the, foams or whatever materials are in there. And then the glue, especially also that holds all that stuff in, how long they expect that to last before it starts breaking down too much. It's in those helmets, unless they get beat up really bad and used a ton, should last beyond that expiration date, but that's really when they expect that stuff to start breaking down. So kind of give you an idea, to look at that, to something else to consider when you are looking at helmets. Like I said, especially if you're looking at used helmets. Also within the comments, I definitely recommend you guys checking out the comments that I've had over on YouTube Shorts, or also tons and tons of comments and discussion over on TikTok. A lot of good stuff in there. Someone did mention about the Virginia Tech, I believe it is, their helmet study. I'll put a link to it here in the show notes. They just about every year or so, I think, update this. They do helmet ratings. The ratings that they do are mainly based on impact tests. They do say that they check some other stuff on there as well. Do not take this as the gospel is be all end all. It is not something that, hey, the highest rated helmet will stop all concussions or anything like that. Definitely not the case. But it's a good reference, especially if you're trying to decide between a couple different helmets to kind of get an idea of what those differences might be. Most of the helmets that they've tested, they have a little bit of write-up on them. It's not just, hey, this is the pure numbers that it came off with. It's usually a little bit more in-depth than that. So it's a nice thing to look at if you are shopping for helmets. So like I said, we'll leave a link to that in the show notes as just another resource out there to look at. Also, a couple people pointed out when I talked about sticks and getting used sticks, about getting repaired sticks. That is a thing that is out there. Someone suggested this Snapped Sticks. That's SNAPPD. It's at snappedhockeysticks.com. Again, link to everything that I talk about in the show notes. And it's repaired hockey sticks. That is a thing that's out there. I know some people that have used them and had great success. I've never heard of the Snapped brand before, but I know people that have used other repaired hockey sticks and they seem fine. I know people that have used them and, you can tell that they're a little bit off. You can tell they feel a little bit different, but they're usually way cheaper. That's a big savings thing. So it's kind of a different route. If you want to get a little bit of a nicer stick for cheap, that's something worth looking at. It's repaired hockey sticks. So this one is snapped hockey. That's one that was suggested in one of the comments on TikTok. And yeah, I'll again leave a link to that in the show notes. I do want to shout out, did have some fan mail sent from Kent over in Springfield. He was actually asking about hockey skates and trying to decide between a couple different kind of mid-ish level, I guess you'd call them, hockey skates. He was talking about Bauer Fly 30s, M30s, and CCM FT 870s. Those are all kind of in the same category of that like mid-tier skates that are out there. I will say I am not a that kind of equipment expert by any means. I definitely recommend checking out the YouTube channel Hockey Tutorial. They do a really good job of really just delving in to probably way more than you ever cared to know about hockey equipment, especially like skates and sticks as well. But they do a really good job with that to check their stuff out if you want like a real in-depth thought on some of these things. But I do know people that have the Bauer Fly 30s, and I know people that have the CCM FT 870s, and they've liked them. I haven't heard anything bad about them. I don't know anybody that has the Bauer M30s at all, but the Fly 30s and the 870s, I do know people that use them. I know people that use them in my level of beer league, which is lower level beer league, and they really like them, and they seem to last really well. They seem to have been lasting at least at least a season or so that I've noticed that people have them. So yeah, but the biggest thing with skates, like the most important thing when you're getting any kind of skates, is trying them on. Buying skates strictly online is really, really tough unless you are like replacing skates that you know exactly how they fit and you're getting the exact same things. It's really, really hard to do because I think all the skate manufacturers kind of have multiple lines, and all the lines fit slightly differently. They kind of have the low foot volume, the wide skate, high foot volume lines. So they all fit a little bit differently, and you don't quite know how those fit without actually trying them on. So skates, much like helmets, something that you really, really need to try on and get a good fit for it. I think some people start to think with skates that you can always, get them baked, and they think that solves everything for fit issues. And baking skates does not. Same thing, like you can get skates punched out, which is where they kind of push out a very small portion of the skate if something's like rubbing weird on your foot. And that can help out a little bit. But if you have skates that don't fit right to begin with, all that stuff is not going to fix any of that. It's not a cure-all for anything. So you definitely want to go try on skates, get fitted for skates, and see what works best. And then when you get them baked and molded on your foot, which most skates now, as long as you don't get the lowest level, can be baked. But as you kind of move up on the levels of your skates, how many times they can be baked without kind of ruining them, but also how much of it can be molded. Lower level, kind of lower level skates can be baked, but they don't really wrap around as well as like top tier skate would, which might be completely moldable around your foot. But again, that's not going to take up more volume or change a half size skate or anything like that for you for molding. Really, that's just going to kind of conform around your foot just a little bit better than it would out of the box. So that great thing to do, get your skates baked if you can, but don't count on that fixing everything with your skates. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps out. If you guys want to send any kind of questions or fan mail or anything like that to the show, you can do that over at thebeerleaguer.com. There is a form out there you can fill out that has everything in it. You can also text the show. There's always a link in the show notes to text the show as well if you want. Would love to hear from you if you have any thoughts or comments on any of the stuff that we talked about in this shorts episode or any other episodes, or if you have future show ideas. Okay, something else I wanted to kind of circle back on is talking about the Olympics, talking about the Olympic hockey teams. I had previously kind of given my thoughts on what I thought the rosters kind of would look like, slash what I think that they should have looked like. And yeah, wanted to talk real quick about that a little bit and how much I got right and how much I got wrong. With Team Canada, pretty close to right. Goalies, I had thought that they should bring kind of lean more on bringing some of the young guys along. So like I had Matthew Schaefer, I had Jet Greaves as younger people to bring along, and those were incorrect. And then the other, I think, big thing that surprised me a little bit is how much they leaned on a couple more Tampa Bay Lightning players. I did not think that they would be bringing, so many Lightning guys, but it makes sense because John Cooper is the coach and he's Lightning coach. So should have thought of that, having that in there. I am still surprised that they don't have Seth Jarvis on the team. That's one of the big surprises for me, but he's hurt, so maybe that's why. I don't know. See how that goes. Then also on Team USA, similar thing where I kind of leaned on some of the more younger guys making the roster. I kind of knew with goalies, I assumed that they would take Swayman, and they did. But I didn't put that in my roster that I made up. That's where it kind of relied on what I would do of taking a young guy because he's your third goalie. Otherwise, again, for the most part, pretty close to what they had. But again, they did a thing of taking a chunk more Rangers because they have Sullivan as their coach, which I'm a little surprised at because the Rangers are not very good this year. So, they, instead of taking some of the kind of more young guys that I thought they would, someone like a Cole Caulfield or a Matthew Knies or something, instead taking, a JT Miller and a Vincent Trocheck, who are both not having really good years, but I'm guessing Sullivan trusts those guys or relies on those guys. And then I think my kind of assumption is there was like some negotiating going on with the guys he wanted versus who kind of the Team USA staff wanted to bring is, okay, he got those guys, so he didn't get to bring Adam Fox, who is also having a better year, I think, than those guys, but whatever. Leaving him off and then bringing Noah Hannafin in his place. Otherwise, kind of what I had talked about in that episode that we did. So I don't know. Let me know if you guys like if I touch on any of that kind of stuff, any pro level hockey stuff or anything versus just generally like what we talk about on here, which is beer league stuff. Also, I'm curious if you guys have kind of stayed up with all the news on the Olympic rink. That's, I think, been very entertaining to watch of them scrambling. The rink went from being NHL size to a little shorter now. And then there's been all these updates of around the rink. They had like some test events. They had a hole in the ice. Obviously the arena is not finished and there's things in it. It's kind of funny to watch those tours of stuff where it looks kind of finished for what's there, like kind of, but they have no food stands. I think they had no place to handle like tickets and stuff. I guess most of the bathrooms were closed. And like, okay, I guess that's stuff that can get finished. But then some of the people that were at like this test event and they're like walking around looking at things, I thought it was really funny to see, there's like just bare drywall places. There's like the wire runs exposed places, stuff like that. I think that's a way bigger deal than like the temporary seats that they have in there. Because I'm pretty sure that this arena is being built in like a U shape, and then they have temporary seating on the one end for the Olympics, just for Olympic stuff going on. And once the Olympics are out, that's going to all come out, and it's going to be like just, open-ended there, U-shaped thing that they can use for all sorts of other stuff. I think that's the idea behind it. So that's not that big of a deal to me, but the fact that they just have, like all the exposed wiring and, like I said, like unfinished drywall and stuff like that just seem really weird. I'm sure they'll get enough stuff done. I've seen a little bit of stuff they show for some of the locker rooms, and it looks terrible. They're just rooms, which I don't know how these NHL people are going to be feeling about that. I guess they do have some finished locker rooms, which I'm sure, hockey's going to be the big thing there. So like Team USA, Team Canada, they're going to get the nice locker rooms. So some of these other teams they're going to get screwed. They're going to have locker rooms that look, as bad or worse than some beer league locker rooms. So I don't know. I find it entertaining to see that. And I'm really curious to see what teams think afterwards and the kind of stuff they're saying. So I'm sure they're not going to be happy about it. Also, another thing that I wanted to kind of touch on, I really wanted to ask listeners out there, kind of hear from you guys about playing on outdoor rinks. Unfortunately, near me, there's not really any outdoor rinks that I know of. I know some people do things in their backyards, but I'm not really north enough to have it be cold enough for that to be a regular thing. And the lake, I'm right by the lake. The lake does not freeze enough to play hockey on at all. There are little ponds and stuff around that I think sometimes do, but it has to be below freezing for a number of days for these things to be okay to skate on. And honestly, it usually doesn't stay freezing for that long around here. It will dip down that low for like 2 days and then it'll go back up. So usually don't have that. So I'm just curious if people are playing in outdoor ponds, if you're playing in the backyard, if you have backyard rinks, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear where those are at. If there's ones that would be within a reasonable drive, I would love to go play some outdoor hockey. So I would love to hear from people if you are doing that. Once again, best way to get a hold of the show, thebeerleaguer.com. There's a form in there you can fill out and send stuff. You can also email from there, whatever you prefer. You can send a voicemail from there. There is also the texting option, like I talked about. That's always in the show notes. And finally, as I always like to on these shorts episodes, which I think this is actually going to be a shorts episode. Usually I say these are shorts and then they wind up taking half an hour. But I also like to throw out at the end of these episodes a social media account to follow, something that I've been following that I think is fun, somebody that's doing something interesting or informative, something like that. And I wanted to shout out somebody on TikTok, once again, Ref Aaron on TikTok. He is obviously a ref. He refs some different levels, and his videos on there are great. He has videos that are informative, like explaining certain rules or explaining why things are a way that they are. He has that. He also has funny little skits that he does that are really good and pretty fun. So yeah, it's a fun account. He also is very interactive on there with comments, which I always appreciate. So definitely recommend checking that out. It's Ref Aaron over on TikTok. All right, that's it, everybody. That's it for this shorts episode. Actually, was able to keep this one short. Hopefully that answers some of the questions that people have had from some of the previous episodes. Some follow-up there. I'm sure there'll be more follow-up on this, like used versus new and beginner equipment and things like that. Keep them coming and answer them in another shorts episode. Or if there's enough things, we'll just do a whole nother episode on this stuff. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you listening. Catch you in the next one.
Thanks for sticking around. I wanted to let you know that we added the ability to text the show. If you check out any of the show notes for any of the newer episodes, you'll see a link called Text the Show. Just click that and it'll open up your text app of choice. There, you'll see a code automatically inserted into your text message. Please leave that there. That makes sure your message gets routed to the show properly. Add your message and just send it away. We only get to see your area code, so if you want to include your name to be mentioned, make sure you include that in your message. Give show topics you'd like to see, comment on previous episodes, tell us what we missed, or what book, movie, YouTube video we should be checking out. All the messages are seen, and most go into planning what we do next, or get mentioned in a shorts episode, recapping what we missed. Thanks for listening.